Laurie Houston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart. And today, well, we're back with Tom Campbell, my favorite co-host. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but he is.
Uh-oh. Now all your other co-hosts are going to be jealous.
I know. So I guess the thing is, it's been a year now. Well, almost a year. We closed everything down. We're still in lockdown right now. I don't really want to talk about COVID. I don't want to talk about all the stuff, anything that's going on. But I guess the thing that I want to talk about is what's next? Like, what are our next steps? How do we move now forward in our life? I mean, yes, things have changed. Maybe we, eventually we'll probably be able to travel again, but maybe it'll be different. Maybe everything's going to be different, but that doesn't matter. The thing is, we have to take some steps now to go to that next level so that we're all in a place of, dare I say, love, or at least not in fear as much, but just our steps. What can we do to move forward on this and leave that year behind?
Well, let's keep it practical rather than theoretical, and say, what could people do if they just wanted to say, let's just get on with it, let's get on with our lives. Let's create a new normal, because we're never going to repeat the old normal.
Let's hope.
The old normal is just where we were then, and we're different now. So we're not going to repeat that. We're going to find a new normal. But actually, that's what evolution is all about, is finding a new normal, right? Evolution means you're continually finding new normals. You're evolving. When you're growing, you are continually finding new normals. So that's a good thing.
Right.
It's a good thing to be booted out of your comfort zone and have to do new things, new ways, do without things you used to have new things that you can perhaps do that you didn't think of before, and start to create a new normal. And as soon as that new normal gets really normal, in other words, becomes another rut, well, then it's time to grow up and change and get a new normal. Right. So what are some of the practical things we could do? Well, one thing that I would suggest that many people do is turn off the news. Mm-hmm. Stop spending so many hours listening to what other people's opinions are about everything. Just have your own opinion and base it on your own personal experience, not on what somebody said that heard somebody else say, not on that, but just your own personal experience. Say, about, you mentioned the, inoculations, getting the shots. Well, instead of basing your thoughts about that on all the stuff you've read from all the other people, and you've been, digesting and getting all this information about it, just what's your experience? What's your experience? Have you ever had an inoculation for something before? Well, you probably have. A lot of those are mandatory. You've probably had smallpox. You probably had polio. You've probably had a bunch of other ones. And did you suffer a lot, or was it okay? Did you get polio anyway? Did you, get smallpox? Well, you probably didn't. So just look and use your own experience to come to your own conclusions about what it is you think is the best to do. Aren't
those cures? Like, from what I understand, this vaccine's not a cure. Like, well, other ones with polio and some of the ones, those are cures.
They are pretty much cures in the sense that they have a very high percentage of people who, once they take that inoculation, say, against smallpox, there's like a 99% chance they won't get smallpox. Well, some of the inoculations against COVID are almost that good. They're up in the 95, 98. At least the Pfizer one, Spitzer, whatever, they're up in that thing. And yeah, that's pretty much a cure. Right now, they don't know how long it'll last. You'll get some immunity, but whether that immunity lasts for 6 months, a year, lifetime, they don't know yet. And, that's ongoing. But we know that at least in the short term, they're pretty close to a cure. When you get above 90%, then you're getting into that cure range. That it just doesn't happen anymore because so many people are invulnerable to it that it just doesn't get passed around anymore. It just dies. It never makes it into the mainstream because there's so many people who are inoculated against it, they won't transmit it. So the virus just can never get a hold. So then it's called a cure. So I'd say at least the Pfizer one, Spitzer, whatever, that's probably close to a cure if it lasts a long time. Now, maybe you'll have to get a 1-year booster or, who knows? Most of the flu shots that have been around for decades, you get them every year. But that's not necessarily because their immunization doesn't last any longer. It's because the flus keep changing. You get different flu bugs, every year, so they give you a different shot. So now this one, of course, is changing too. But the changes so far have not been outside of what the inoculation can handle. And they can always change that inoculation just like they do with flus to kind of keep up with what's new. If there's a variant that gets going and gets widely spread in society, then they'll probably come up with another shot for that. So it depends. Like the new ones we've seen have been easier to catch and spread, but they don't do as much damage. They don't make you as sick. So, it's a difference.
They've been blowing that one out of the proportion.
Yeah.
Since they've been saying it, all of our numbers have been going down. They haven't been going up.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
They're not going. It hasn't gotten going yet. And they think that the vaccines that are out there will probably work to some extent, with the new variants as well. They just haven't tested them yet. Well, we're in the mode right now where people are worried, people are concerned. They hear a lot of scary stuff on the internet. Oh, don't do this. It'll kill you. It'll do this. It'll do that. And we hear all this stuff. And most of that we hear just isn't true.
But the problem, and I don't want to make this show about this, but isn't the problem that they really haven't done any tests? I mean, they haven't been able, usually these things take years to develop.
Mm-hmm. They do, but no, they've done all the tests.
Yes. Done comparison tests with people?
Yes, they've done all those tests. The only thing that they have done that they can't do is to see how long it will actually work. They won't know that. It'll be 5 years from now before they'll know whether or not it works for 5 years. You can't tell that until the time goes by. But everything else, they have done to the same exactitude and to the same extent that they have done on any of the viruses. Matter of fact, with COVID, they've done actually more than what they usually do. The reason for that is the long pole in the tent. The thing that is the hardest for them to do is the clinical trials, where they go out and actually see how effective is it. Well, with COVID, there's so many, you have so many people getting it that before, if they had like 10,000 people in their sample, which means 10,000 people who had it, and 10,000, they get 20,000 people. This is the way they do it. They get 20,000 people. Half of them they give the inoculation to, and then they just wait and see what happens. So 6 months later, how many of the ones inoculated ended up with the disease? How many of the ones not inoculated ended up with the disease. And then they do some statistics to come up with statistical significance. Well, that's been the hard thing to do. And that's what has typically taken like 10 years to accumulate all that data for, say, 10,000 people. But with COVID, there's so many, there were so many people getting it so often, with the huge rates of people getting it, they could do that test not with 10,000 people, but with 50,000 people. And they could do it in 6 months because that was, it was a pandemic. Typically, they don't do that in the middle of a pandemic. So it takes them a long time to accumulate that data. This time they got the data very quickly and to a greater extent, like I said, 50,000 instead of 10,000, and they got it quickly. So that sped everything up. And all the rest of the basic science that goes into it, they've done all that just as well as they've done any. The problem that we have is that, fear is a thing that duplicates itself. Fear is a thing that creates more fear. If you have intrepidations, if you have fear, they must rush this thing out and maybe it's not going to work very well and whatever, and you kind of have that fear, well, you will find people will play on that fear because that will get them attention. If you say something scary, you get everybody's attention. So we have lots and lots of people making up scary stuff just because they fear that scary stuff might be true. Oh, yeah, they've rushed this thing out in 1/10 the time. It couldn't possibly be very good. It's just a trick, and all this sort of thing because somebody has the fear that that's the case. So they write about it as if it's a fact, not a fearful imagining of theirs because they see it in their own mind as a possibility. The more they think about it, it becomes a belief. And after that, it's a fact. It's just the nature of belief. Anything you believe, you think it's a fact. That's what belief is. So we're getting all of this negative misinformation flooding the information space. So that's why my first recommendation for people who want to find their new normal is to turn off the TV, stop spending so many hours on the internet, stop reading all the stuff. Just base your choices on your own experience. Base it on your own experience. And if you want to talk to people, don't do it on the internet. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to people that you respect, that you think are people who understand things, people who are generally, you think, smart people or aware people. If you want to talk to other people, but there is so much misinformation. It's like the forces of chaos have been running rampant for the last year. The last 5 years, the last 10 years on the internet, just creating chaos, just because chaos is power. It's like the 2-year-olds when they go through the no phase. If you've ever seen a 2-year-old child, and they always somewhere at the terrible twos, right? They get in the no phase. Anything you say is no. And of course, most adults then end up tricking them. Would you like an ice cream cone? And they'll shout no. And then they kind of look like, uh-oh, I didn't mean that. But anyway, no is the answer to everything. And the reason is because there is little power in yes. There's little power in being cooperative. So when you're at the level where you can't really create or build anything, you don't have enough whatever it takes to go out and build things, you can still destroy. So it's power. It's the power of I, the power of me. I can say no, and that changes things. When I say no, things change. When I say yes, well, we just go along with the plans. But when I say no, then the plans change. They have to accommodate me because I'm important. I'm a significant individual that counts. So the little 2-year-olds who are just coming into the realization that they're a part of this world and that they are interactive and that they do count. Well, they exercise that in the only way they know how, which is no. Well, adults do the same thing. When adults feel powerless, they have no ability to really find out what the true information is. They have no ability. Well, they do the same thing. They tend to be negative because that's the only that's the only path where they can do something that changes things, that matters, that people pay attention to. So we have lots and lots of people out there who are expressing their fears as facts because they can't express anything else. They don't know enough to express to express facts, because facts you actually have to dig to get to. You don't get those by reading Facebook. You have to go into a site that specializes in virology, written by virologists at some university someplace that's disconnected from drug sales or anything else, and just read about it. Read about it. Things that were posted years ago have nothing to do with COVID. Read about how it works and what they're doing. And then you can hopefully have some facts. But if you just hear stuff on the internet and people are making things up, most of that is negative because people want to express themselves. They want to be heard. They want to make a difference. And the only way they know how to do that is with negative stuff, because positive stuff actually takes information, takes knowledge, it takes experience, it takes expertise to say something positive. So unless you've done a lot of homework, it's hard to say something positive without a lot of knowledge. It's easy to say something negative with no knowledge whatsoever. You see, so being negative is just an easier thing to do. And people want to say something. They want to have have an effect. So anyway, we've had, in the last decade, we've had this onslaught of misinformation on the internet. Well, when you have new technology, you go through phases in the beginning where that technology gets abused and used poorly. Well, we had the industrial age, and in the industrial age, the early industrialists really took advantage of people, and they abused them. People were working, 7 days a week, every day from sun up to sundown, and getting just almost enough money to keep themselves alive, to buy food and pay shelter for a shack someplace. And they gave them just enough to keep them alive coming back to the factory, but not enough for them to go beyond that, and do something else. So it was abusive. And we had the robber barons who were very abusive. They shanghaied people, Chinese people, and brought them over here to work on the railroads and things. It was abuse all over. Well, that worked itself out, 100 years. It wasn't quick, but it worked itself out. And we don't have those kinds of abuses anymore. We still have abuses, but not those kinds of abuses, not that blatant. Well, in the world, probably somewhere we do, but I'm talking about in general, in the larger world, we've changed that a lot. Well, in the information revolution, it's the same way. So we start with an internet, really big new idea, new paradigm, and right away you have people who are trying to steal other people's money, scams. You have all sorts of things that internet enabled. Well, it's like that. We're in the very first stages of the information revolution. And we have now just realized that misinformation, propaganda is a really serious thing on that internet, and it can do some really serious harm, and 10 years ago, nobody had a clue that might be the case. Well, now we know it's the case, and right now we're trying to figure out what to do about it. And mostly we don't have a plan what to do about it. So it's going to still be like that for a while yet, because it takes time for people to come to terms with that sort of abuse. So stop getting your information from the internet for a while. Okay, particularly just from people who are talking. Just, make sure that if you get your information from the internet, go to the internet, go someplace, research it, until you get serious information, not just people blathering off about opinions. You're not going to get serious information probably on Facebook. You're going to have to go someplace a little more serious for that. So that would be my first suggestion. Turn off the TV, turn off the computer, and do your own thinking based on your own experience. And let all the negativity go. Just stop listening to all the negative stuff, because all it will do is confuse you. Because you see, you don't have enough information to sort out what's true and what's not. So you listen to stuff, and that sounds like, well, maybe it's true and it's a little scary. Maybe I should worry about that. You see, and then you hear more stuff. Anything that gets traction on the internet, like makes people worry, then 100 more people will jump on that bandwagon and start to pump that up. Because again, they're looking for attention. So do your own thinking. Don't listen to the stuff that's just out there in the information world that isn't really credible stuff. Now, it may sound credible, because if you're telling a lie, it's more believable if you really tell a big lie than if you tell a little lie. So you can say, oh, yes, I interviewed 10 virologists, and they all said that this was a dangerous thing, and and here they are, and here are their names, and they're all Dr. somebody. Well, that could all be made up. You don't know that. Don't be so gullible about anything, positive or negative. Just don't be so gullible. Just say, I really don't know. I don't have that information personally, so I'm going to go research it. I'm going to go find sites that aren't just, let me tell you the answers, but sites that really discuss the science, that really discuss what's going on, how it's being done. So do that. And then if it's credible, it'll be fine. But you're not going to get credible information if you don't really dig for it. Because, credible information isn't at the top of your reading list. Credible information has to be dug for, because it's not the sexy, sound bite, snazzy, headline kind of information. It's not something that you're going to read in a small paragraph and now you understand. It's something that you're going to have to read 20 pages before you understand. But go there. Most people can understand these sort of things. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to be a virologist. You don't have to be a scientist. You can read through these things and understand what they're saying.
I think part of the problem is that there are credible people out there that are saying it's a problem. I think that's the problem, is that there's so many different people that have their own vision or idea of something that.
Well, I haven't heard any credible people yet say that it was a big problem.
Oh, I have.
I have. And maybe when I hear people say that, maybe they lose credibility. I don't know, but I don't think that's the case. I basically, most of the people that I find credible are not in the fear-mongering business. They're just this is the way it is. Inoculations or just vaccinations kind of get a bad image anyway, because of course they're going to hurt some people. Because the thing is with the vaccinations, you give it to hundreds of millions of people. Worldwide, you give it to billions of people. And you give anything, take a glass of milk and give it to 100 million people, and somebody will probably die from it. Somebody will choke on it, and that choking and coughing will cause a heart attack. Somebody will be allergic to it. When you have that many people, you're going to get problems. You're going to get negative things. So it's true. These vaccinations do cause bad things to happen. But they're only bad things to happen in the ones out of tens of thousands, ones out of millions. driving a car causes bad things to happen too. So does flying an airplane. So does going for walks in the park. All these things can cause bad things to happen. There is risk involved in life. And yes, vaccinations carry some risk with them, but the risk is generally very small, which is it's not much comfort for the person who gets hurt by it, that the risk was small. Somebody's in a car accident and loses their legs or something, and you can say, yeah, but the risk was small. That doesn't help them any. I understand that, but it really is small. We still drive cars, we still fly in airplanes, and we take walks in the park, even though there's risks to those things. We take over-the-counter medicines. We eat junk food. We eat a lot of sugary, stuff, and there's definitely risks to all of that, and we do that without even thinking about it. So, yes, there are risks, no doubt. But if you want to get an audience and you want to get a lot of people to pay attention to you, then you just talk about the risks. You talk about the negative because negative grabs people's attention. Positive does not. That's part also of our survival. Our own survival instincts tell us to pay attention to the bad stuff so we can make sure that doesn't happen to us. So we give the great bulk of our focus to negative things. That's why if you look at any newscast, you'll find it's all about the horrible things that have happened. And any newscast that's just about, oh, Tommy got the very present he wanted for his birthday, and he is so happy today, nobody's going to talk about that. That's not news. Nobody really cares that Tommy's happy about the present he got for his, 6th birthday. That's just not news. But, Tommy, gets run over by, a neighbor's bicycle and has a head injury. Well, that's news. We want to hear about that because now Tommy got hurt, and that'll go right up there. And we all want to hear about that. So that's just the way we are. We focus on the negative. It grabs our attention. So anyone out there in information land who wants to get attention and wants their stuff to be listened to and wants their name to be remembered, they know to speak about negative things. Speak about fearful things. Tell people about things that are terrible and awful. And that gets them an audience. It gets them important. It gets them, reporters will come around and ask them. It gets them interviewed. And suddenly there's somebody to be reckoned with just because they say things that are scary. So we have this bias in our attention, this bias in our incentives to go talk and say things to people, en masse. And all of those biases point in the negative direction. So you just have to realize that when you go and read a newspaper, when you go onto the internet, there is this big bias toward the negative. It's part about us because that's what gets our attention, and it's part about them because that's what makes them successful as, a channel or whatever. They tell you the stuff that makes you pay attention. They get more viewers. They sell more ads. They make more money. And it's all about being negative, sensational. So big bias out there. So you need to look at that and just kind of take the negative knob and turn the negative down about 80%. And that makes it more of an even story because that's just the way we are. So that's the first thing. Get out of negative space. If you go read things on the internet and come away angry, stop it. That's not good. Don't read that stuff anymore. It's not healthy. And probably it's not true. Probably it's there because it makes you interested. It sucks you in. And as soon as it sucks you in, somebody else is making money. You click on some site, that person who owns that site gets paid because of their advertising. Okay, so who doesn't want to get paid? Well, the more you can suck people in, the more scandalous, the more negative, the more scary, the more money you're going to make. So that's just, again, that's the internet. That's what comes with this information age. And we haven't yet figured out what to do about that. It's got this huge negative bias attached to it. So just let all that stuff go. Think for yourself. Turn it off. Stop getting news. If you want to go to the internet, then look at pictures of cats. Style up, pictures of pretty trees and fall foliage and, waterfalls spilling over forest groves, get something that's interesting and helps you feel better. Makes you laugh. Yeah. Dude, if you're going to go to the internet, then get entertained by it in ways that are positive. Don't be sucked in to the negative stuff. So that would be my biggest thing for people who want to start a new life is unplug from the negative. You don't have to unplug from everything. Just unplug from the negative. Stop believing everything you hear, particularly everything that's negative. Just let it go. Talk to people who have gotten a vaccination. If you think it's scary, just talk to your neighbor. Did you get a vaccination yet? And if they say yes, you can say, well, did it hurt? Have you had problems? Have you gotten the disease? And see what you get. And make your judgments based on that. Do your own research. Because this big negative bias is scaring everybody. Fear is such that once you get scared, you're open to be scared more. Fear creates more fear. And it builds and it builds. And pretty soon you have a whole population that is kind of freaked out on fear and don't know what to do. And it's like they're being bombarded from different sides and they don't know what to do. The only thing they can do is have a panic attack, kind of curl up in a fetal position and spend an hour hiding from the world. And I think a lot of people kind of feel like that's what they'd like to do. It's just kind of withdraw for a little bit, but it's a good idea. Withdraw. And if staying away from media for a day or 2 days, see what it does to your attitude. Just turn off the media for 2 or 3 days. And see how you feel. No politics, no COVID, just tune out for a week. And I bet at the end of that week, you'll feel a lot better. You just feel a lot better. So the other things that you can do is realize that fear is the problem. Anything that's wrong, any problem you're having, anything that makes you unhappy, it's fear. Fear is the basic problem, period. Well, you need to get rid of that fear. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about fear versus, good sense. Okay, so some people would say, well, it makes good sense to be fearful if there's something scary out there, right? Fear will save you. No, fear doesn't save you. Fear always makes you stupid. It doesn't save you. Being well-informed saves you, not fear. The reason, that you should, get inoculation or not get one should be on the information you have gleaned from, good sources, not fear. So even if it's just the fact that you are angry, well, that you're angry because you have fear. If you're unhappy and your life is painful and your relationships aren't good, that's because of fear. So know that fear is the problem. And loading yourself up with more fear from the internet is just throwing gasoline on that fire that's already burning inside you, making your life difficult. So jettison as much fear as you can. If you know people and friends of yours and neighbors and all they want to talk about is fear, 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 what's the scariest thing you've heard? Don't go there. Don't talk to them. Change the conversation. Go talk to the neighbor on the other side. Just don't hang out with people who are all about fear. You need to reduce that fear. in yourself.
It is fear in a lot of cases that are pushing people to get vaccines.
They get it because they're afraid. That's the wrong reason.
I know.
You know, that's the wrong reason to get fear. That's the wrong reason. I mean, that's the wrong reason to get a vaccine, and it's the wrong reason to not get the vaccine. Fear shouldn't be a reason either way. Fear is not helpful. Fear is useless. Do your own research. And don't just do research, you know, by talking to people, you know, on Facebook. That's not research. It doesn't count as research. Listening to the drivel that is out there in this very negative, biased information space that we have, that's not research. So no, fear should not make you want to get it or keep you from getting it. Fear's the wrong thing. If fear is motivating you, just stop. Let go of the fear. Think for yourself. Do your own research. Think about it. Talk to people who have gone through it before you. Do some solid research places. You know, call up your physician, talk to them. Just try to get information wherever you can. See what they tell you. But do it on your own. Yeah, fear is not a good motivator to do something or not to do something. Unfortunately, our culture, our advertising, you know, our media people all know that if you want to manipulate people, if you want an audience, you use fear to do it. Religion, same thing. It's that, you know, it's that fire and brimstone, you know, that pulls them in and gets them putting those coins in the box that gets passed around. You know, it's fear. So you just need to realize that there's lots of fearful people in the world, and every one of them would like you to be frightened about the same things they're frightened about because it makes them feel better. So they're all going to try to convince you to be frightened about the same things they're frightened about. Well, you need to not go there. You need to just not be moved by that, not get sucked into that, because then you're fearful. Now you're going around getting other people to be fearful like you are, and it just spreads, and pretty soon the whole society is kind of locked up in a coma. They don't know what to, you know, they don't know what to do or how to do it. If they, you know, they're afraid not to get it, and they're afraid to get it. It's like there's no choice that isn't damned. You know, damned if they do, damned if they don't. Everything is fearful. Well, that's not a good place to live. That's not the way forward. The way forward is to turn off the fear. Don't talk to those people. And if they're like that, walk away or change the subject. Don't listen to that stuff. Just live your own life. Decide what it is you want to do. Go do it. And then deal with it. You don't always know the big picture. You don't always know. There's a lot of things you don't know. And many people just won't do the research. It's just not the way they function. They don't function by doing research. They function by asking friends. They function by, you know, stuff that happens on Facebook. That's how they function. So a lot of people won't do that research. So what should they do? Well, they should just put it all aside, go inside their mind and say, what do I think is the best thing to do? And then they should do it. And then they should be aware of what are the consequences of that, and accept the consequences. Say, okay, I took the vaccine and because I thought that was best, I'll accept the consequences. We'll see what that does. And, you know, if it turns out to be bad consequences, I'll live with that. My life will still go on. If it turns out to be good consequences, good for me. And then the same thing about the other thing. Okay, I decided not to get the vaccine. Well, now I got to live with the consequences. If there's bad consequences, I'll live with those. I may catch the disease and die from, suffocation in my own, lung goo. If that's the case, then I accept that. It was my choice and go on. So stop being afraid. come to a conclusion based on your own information, make a choice, then do it, and accept whatever comes after that. Don't worry about it. It's the constant worrying, and oh no, and what do I do, and did I do it right? Should I change my mind? And constant negative will just make you a miserable person. So figure it out. If you can't do research, well, take your best guess. And then just do it and see and learn from it. See, that's how we learn. We don't always know all the answers, but we take our best guess. We think about it. We connect with sources we think we can trust. Then we make our decision. Then let the rest of the chips fall out where they may and accept them. And then you're done with it. You don't have to fear it anymore. You've accepted it. So that takes courage, you see. And you've probably often heard me say the only real antidote to fear is courage. Well, it takes courage to just do it and accept the results. But that's what you need to do. And then it's behind you. It's not that big, scary thing you carry around with you. Because if you carry so much stress around with you, and all of this fear is stressful. That's the thing about fear. Fear is stressful. You carry a lot of stress around, and it will definitely make you sick. It will definitely undermine your health. If you're worried about the inoculation or the shot that you get, giving you a probability of poor health, well, your fear is going to give you a much higher probability of poor health just because of the stress. So make your choice. Whichever choice you make, it's your choice. And see, I will never tell somebody what to do. I try to always stop there. I try to give people information so they can choose what to do, because they have to make the choice, because they have to accept the results. So that's the thing. You need the courage to be, the courage to make a choice, and then the courage to just do it and live with it and accept it wherever it takes you. It'll take me on a path, and then I'll have to deal with it from there on. And you need to do that in every aspect of your life, not just here, not just in these troubled times, but that's how you deal with life in general. That's how you deal with the boss at work. That's how you deal with your coworkers and your spouse and your children. You decide, you think, what is the low entropy choice? What's the choice that is best for everyone here? And you make that choice, and you do it, and then you pay attention and learn from it. Look at the consequences. Were they good or were they bad? If they're bad, learn from it. If they're good, pat yourself on the back and keep going. You see, that's how life works. It's okay to make mistakes. You can deal with all sorts of things. But what you have the hardest time dealing with physically and health-wise is stress. You got to let go of the stress. That's the thing that kills people. Talk about things that hurt people and make them ill. Well, it makes them crazy. It makes them emotionally ill, mentally ill, and physically ill. Stress is a killer. Stress is the thing that's behind most of the heart attacks and strokes and high blood pressure and all the other things that kill people by the thousands every day. That's stress. So here you are, wadded up in fear and stress over whether to get a shot or not. And the fear and stress is probably 1,000 times more punishing to you and your body and your psyche than which way you decide whether you get that injection or don't. Probably it won't affect your health nearly as much as the stress will. So we live in times of high stress because we live in times of high fear, and we live in times of high fear because we're now in the information age, and there's this huge bias toward negativity, and we're soaking up all this negative fear-based junk day and night. It's coming at us from all sides, all the time, 24/7. Fear, 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 fear. And that will not only make you ill, but it'll make you emotionally ill as well. So that's how we go forward. We get courage to make a choice and then let it go. Check the results. Is it a good choice? You don't know just now because you don't have enough information. So make one anyway. Do your best. Give it your best shot. And once you give it your best shot, stop worrying about it. You'll deal with whatever happens, and you'll learn from it. See, that's the thing. That's the way to go through life. And it helps if you have a bigger picture. So you know, well, let's say I make a bad choice and it kills me. Well, that's really not such a big deal. You're here to learn and grow up. You have another lifetime and another one and another one after that. You know, so those things aren't that, it's not that big a deal, really. You know, the fear of death is much bigger than it needs to be. You will go on. And all of the other things that might happen to you, you can deal with all of them positively. Let's say you don't get the shot and you end up with COVID and die from it, or you just have heart problems after that, or maybe you just get over it. And all it was you got a stuffy nose for a week, you know. Well, then those are your consequences. How did it go? Are you immune now because you had the disease and it just took a stuffy nose? Oh, well, maybe that wasn't so bad. You see, did you give it to anybody else? You know, did you like kill grandma when you went to see her for her birthday? You know, well, that would be bad. That would not be a good consequence. So, you know, again, you have to look and see, how does it affect not just you, but everybody? How does it affect everybody? You don't want to kill grandma. You know, you don't want to do things like that. So where's your choice? Make your choice. Forget about it. Go on with your life and do that in all your stressors. Dealing with your boss. Okay, how are you going to deal with your boss? Well, maybe one way is to find another job. You know, another way maybe to go in and have a heart-to-heart talk with him. Another way would be maybe just to keep your mouth shut and keep on keeping on because that's the best way. Well, any of those things that you decide it, do it, live with the consequences, and don't stress over it. Have the courage to live your life. Make your choices. Take your knocks, take your consequences, and learn from it. So that's the optimal way to, you know, the question is, how do we move forward? That's the optimal way to move forward in all phases of your life. This going out and getting into the fear exchange where you get fears, you know, you get scary stuff and you pass the scary stuff around. Everybody's talking about the scary stuff and nobody knows what to do and everybody's upset. And you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Your stress levels are up to here. And, you know, that's not helpful. Where is that taking you? It's taking you no place good. You just need to walk away from all of that. Make a choice. And do it. You know, and it doesn't even matter so much what the choice is that you make. What matters is that you make the choice and learn from it. If you make a poor choice and grandma dies, then you can look back and say, oh, that wasn't a good choice. Or if you make a good choice and grandma doesn't die and nobody dies because you didn't give anybody the thing, because once you got sick, you stayed home and all you got was a snuffy nose, and well, maybe just a stuffy nose is an easy way to get an immunity. That's probably even less trouble than getting a shot in your arm, right? Well, okay, worked out pretty good because you were smart enough to take care of it and not make grandma sick. So, you know, it's not like this is the right path and that's the wrong path. There are just paths. And there are paths that you can learn from, paths that you can grow from because of looking at the consequences. And your whole life will become fun, and it'll be like a maze that you're negotiating, this maze, and it'll be fun because you just make choices and you accept the consequences of the choices positively, not moan about them and complain about them, but you positively accept the consequences as just something else for you to deal with, and you're going to learn something here too. So that's how we go on from here. Positively, not negatively, without fear, doing what we need to do, making the choices we need to take, taking responsibility for those choices, and going forward. And all of your choices shouldn't be made just as what's good for me, but what's good for everybody I connect with. That includes grandma, includes your friends, your neighbors, your people you work with, lots of people in your neighborhood. I mean, everybody you interact with and are a part of a social interaction with, you have to consider all of that. What is my best choice for myself and for everybody that connects with me? And if you do that, your life will be happy. You'll be happy. Your relationships will be good because you'll stop pushing on people to be the way you want them to be. When you just make these choices and say, all right, I live with this person and they always do things that annoy me. Well, you got to just accept that. So that's the way they are. Oh, okay, what can I do? A, I can have a little talk with them and say, please don't do those things. Well, tried that, didn't work. All right, now what am I going to do? Well, you can just accept it and live with it gracefully, positively, because you accept that's just the way they are. Or you can leave. You can go someplace else. So you'll look at all of your options. And when you look at all your options, you pick the one you think is best for everybody. You take that option and you stay positive. That's the way you deal with all the things. To sit and complain and fuss and fight and fume and have a whole life of this constant, I don't know what I call it. It's like living in a soap opera. If you live in a soap opera life where you're constantly embroiled in stuff that isn't nice, isn't positive, that's what will kill you. That's what will take you to poor health, mental health, emotional health, and physical health. That's really the problem. Makes the rest of your choices, simple. Just be positive. Think about everybody. Live your life. Have a good time. I know it sounds easy, but it really does work that way. It really does work that way. You just have to get out of the fear cycle. So first step, getting rid of the fear cycle, is to turn off all the sources of fear and stop paying any attention to them and decide for yourself. Take a week or a month, decide for yourself, what do you think is the best thing to do? And then just do it. Don't be afraid to make a choice, even when you don't really know what the best thing is. You're just making your best guess. That's it. It's as good as you can do. Right? Do what you can do. Give it your best shot. Make your choice. Life is good. So that's how do we take the next step.
All right. Well, sounds, I don't know. I don't want to say scary because that would be the ultimate.
That's the wrong way to go.
You don't want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, interesting times, but I get it.
Yeah. Now, again, like most of the things that I talk about, it's easy to say, harder to do. But even if you just do a little bit of it, if you just shut out half of the negative stuff that you're involved in, that'll help. Or just a quarter of it, that will help. If you're engaged in anything that leaves you upset and angry and stressed, stop it. Don't do that anymore. Stop it. And you can't stop it by making other people change. You have to change yourself. Just don't go there. If it upsets you, it's because you have fear. Fear is what causes all your problems. Fear is not the solution. Fear is always the problem. You don't do good things because you thankfully were frightened into doing them. That's doing the right thing for the wrong reason. and that will eventually bite you. Yeah, that will then eventually turn out badly for you. We do that a lot with our children. We don't tell them all sorts of things. We don't tell them about male, female. We don't tell them about what happens, when you hit puberty, and we don't discuss any of that. And it's real quiet. We keep them ignorant, with the idea, well, if they're afraid, of sexuality, then that will keep them safe. No, it doesn't. It just makes them stupid. And they do things that are a lot worse than if they actually had an education and understood what they were doing and why. You see, fear doesn't get people to do, the right things. They have to do the right things for the right reasons. Otherwise, it always backfires and causes more trouble, than it saves. It hurts people. Fear is the problem. You don't stay out of the woods, because you're afraid of the bears. You stay out of the woods because, it's not smart to go out there when the bears are, having their mating season or doing whatever they're feeling territorial. It's a good time to stay out of the woods, not because you're afraid, but because you have good sense.
Or at least stay out of the outhouses that are out in Alaska anyway. Did you hear about that poor woman?
No.
Well, she sat in an outhouse and there was a bear under there, so she got bit.
Oh no. Yes, your worst nightmare come true, right?
I mean, I don't even think that would be a nightmare. I can't even imagine that even coming anywhere close but it's like, wow, I mean, she wasn't hurt, I don't think. But boy, that would definitely make you jump.
Yep. I bet it changed her into somebody that uses a potty and empties it in the morning. Yeah.
Well, she might not visit her brother for a long, long time.
Yeah, it could be. So, yes. So we just have to get out of the fear cycle. It's so easy to get trapped in fear. It's so easy because most of us are full of fear. So we gravitate to scary things. It's just who we are. So when you're full of fear, it's easy to latch on to more fearful stuff. It's easy to believe that the scary stuff is scary. Well, there are scary things out there in the world, and you need to be intelligent when you make your choices. Study, research, be intelligent. Stay out of the woods because you know that it's a bad idea to walk in the woods, not because you're afraid to go in the woods. Wrong reason. Both will keep you out of the woods, but only knowing what you're doing will keep you safe if you have to go into those woods. So fear is never the solution to anything, except if you're trying to sell somebody something and you're trying to control people, then fear is the solution. That's how you control people. That's how you get attention. That's how you make money, is by frightening people. Well, I guess that's about it. This has kind of been a fear thing, hasn't it?
It's become more a fear thing, yes.
Yeah.
But that's what it all comes down to regardless.
It does.
Fear or love. Yeah. All right. Well, you've been listening to News for the Heart. We've been getting the heart of what matters with Tom Campbell on moving forward and letting go of our fears. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Laurie.
Have a question for Laurie and want to be on the next News from the Heart show? Drop us a line via instant feedback at bmajor.org. News from the Heart is brought to you by Intuitive Soul and is produced by Major Radio for Clear Channel's iHeartRadio and bmajor.org.